So we'll do that. Here's the first question. This will go to Dr. Boddicker and Mr. Donalds. One of the biggest issues, and there are many facing schools in coming years, is teacher retention. What are your ideas to recruit and retain great teachers? Specific ideas, please. Dr. Boddicker?
My specific idea, number one, is to make sure that we pay our teachers what they're worth. At least, even with the national average, we pay them $10,000 less than the national average here in Florida, and then we expect so much from them. So we need to bring teacher salaries up, and so that means we need to reapportion our budget and really take a hard look at where Florida is spending money. And then we need to respect our teachers more. We need to give them longer contracts and reduce the high-stakes testing burden that they and our children labor under right now.
Mr. Donalds?
A couple of things real quick. The first thing we have to do is actually address the teacher certification process. The alternative certification process is actually quite cumbersome for people who are transitioning into the education field. I'm actually working with various school boards and superintendents on policy, next legislation to do that. Essentially, we would grandfather highly effective teachers. We would waive them having to go through the certification process. If they're highly effective for 3 consecutive years, we would essentially deem them as certified teachers because they've proven it in the classroom. The second thing I want to do is I want to actually go back because there was an assertion that either myself or my wife are making money off of charter schools. That's flatly false and ridiculous. I have to do financial disclosures every year. My wife has to do financial disclosures every year. And so if somebody believes that we're making money off of charter schools, that couldn't be further from the truth. It is salacious, it is flat out wrong, and it is uninformed.
All right, we'll move on now to the next question. Ms. McFadden and Mr. Rommel. And this question is, what do you think about using the ACT, the SAT for high school testing instead of our state testing? What do you think of that idea? Ms. McFadden, you'll go first.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Yes, what do you think about using the ACT, SAT for high school testing instead of our current state testing? I think some of you referred to it as high stakes testing earlier.
I actually don't have an opinion about that. I would like to not use any kind of testing. I would like our local school boards to decide what the evaluation should be. High stakes testing does too much it has too much influence. It determines teacher salaries and evaluations. It determines if a school can fail or not. It's all encompassing, and we're not concentrating on teaching our children. We spend 40 days out of the school year to have testing. I think that's wrong.
Mr. Rommel?
I wish I gave this question to Representative Donald, since I'm the finance guy, he's the education guy. But you know what? We do have too much testing, but we need standards. Whatever our educators thinks is the best form of testing, I'm all for it. But to me, I'm going to let the educators decide what that is.
All right, next question is Ms. Karim. Well, you'll know when we get back around to you, you can then answer the question after you answer the next one. You get a chance to follow up, and I'll give you time. Let's see, the next question goes to Ms. Karim and Ms. Pasadomo. What can the legislature do to improve school safety?
This is really important, obviously. Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, we're all thinking about it. The legislature made some improvements on school safety. They asked that every school have a school resource officer. That's important. That was also an unfunded mandate, but having a school resource officer is important. There was a school resource officer at Marjory Stoneman Douglas. What they could have done was also ban assault weapons, because still, assault weapons can be purchased by anyone that's 21 years older, have a background check. But those are military-style weapons. They could have gone further, but school safety starts with making sure that if you're passing mandates at the state level, that they're actually funded. The ACT, SAT question, I don't believe that should be used as a standard, because those are college preparatory exams. Not every kid is going to college, and they don't have to go to college. But to make them have to pass that to graduate high school, I don't think it's good.
Ms. Pasadomo?
Thank you. Last session, everybody knows what happened in Parkland. It was the toughest 2 weeks I've had in the legislature. We passed a bill, the Marjory Stoneman Douglas Act bill, which was the bill passed by one vote in the Senate, and we sent it over to the House. It was crafted, it was so difficult, it passed with a bipartisan vote, and it did a number of things. It included money for those officers. It included money for hardening of the schools. It was $460 million that was included in the budget for school safety measures. The most important thing it does, and I am so proud of it, is the mental health funding. It's just a drop in the bucket of what we need to do to protect our kids. And I think the legislature is committed to do that. If the bill had not passed, bump stocks would not be illegal. If the bill hadn't passed, a mentally ill person could still possess a gun. There's so many things that were important in that bill. Could we do more? Yes.
Thank you. The next question will go back down to Dr. Boddicker and Mr. Donald. And if you do want to follow up on a previous question, of course you can do that after you answer this one. Collier County Schools, according to the writer, many are overcrowded. A freshman student shared with me, said the writer, that the halls are so crowded during class changes. We need more buildings. What are you going to do about this? Do you see any state funding for this? Dr. Boddicker. Overcrowding.
Yes, they are overcrowded, so I would support building more schools, but I'll have to take a more careful look at this and see where the funding is going to come from before I can say, oh yes, I'm going to make sure that a new school is built. But my kids have suffered that same issue, so it's definitely worth taking a look at. And the local school board has a role to play there as well. I just wanted to say that a mentally ill person can still get a gun. It can be adjudicated now if a person is thought to be a threat to themselves or others, go through the courts and their weapons can be taken away. But that same person could go the next day to a gun show and buy a gun. That's something we need to do something about. We need universal background checks to make our kids safer at school in every neighborhood.
Mr. Donald.
Specifically to Collier County overcrowding, part of that problem is that the local school district refuses to rezone schools. I mean, let's be honest. If you want to address overcrowding, the biggest one in our county is at Lower Oak Elementary. I believe the building the actual building holds about 700 kids, and they have portables in the back. I think they're burgeoning over 1,000 right now. The reality is you have to rezone schools. And if you want to rezone schools, you want to talk about a political debate, go see those school board meetings and you'll know something. The second thing is Collier County is the richest county with respect to local tax dollars to support capital. So the school board has to actually take account of their money and budget appropriately over the next 10 years. The third thing that needs to happen is we actually do need to address the SREF standards. SREF is how we say that all schools have been built to a superior hurricane code than the Florida building code. If you looked at the aftermath of Hurricane Irma, the Florida building code came out very, very well. Last thing I will say is this. With respect to the ACT, SAT, I do think we need to change the regimen of tests. We need to have a spectrum of tests. If teachers are teaching to the test, that's because local school district policy is making them do that, not the state.
All right, very good, thank you. We're going to go to Ms. McFadden and Mr. Romanoff for our next question. How should we hold schools receiving HOPE scholarship funding accountable? Ms. McFadden?
I feel like we already had that question, but okay. Well, schools and hopes will be charter schools. So charter schools don't provide a lot of things, and they're not accountable for a lot of things. They should have accountability to the school boards that we elect. That's very clear to me.
Mr. Rommel?
They have an accountability process. If they fail 2 years in a row, they're closed, period.
All right. Moving on to the next question for Ms. Karim and Ms. Pasadoma. What plans, if any, do you have to implement programs for students who are not college-bound due to financial or academic reasons? State programs we're talking about here.
So this is a really good way where our school board can go to our local businesses, small businesses, and say, where are you finding your employment gap? We have a lot of children that are probably not going to go to college. They're going to stay locally where their families are. Where do you need help in your local businesses? In Collier County, we do this well. We can do it better, but we have Lorenzo Walker, we have IT Tech and Immokalee. These are schools that are geared towards children that aren't college bound, and that's okay. Not every kid has to go to college, but when they're able to go into something where they can learn a trade, where they can actually support a family after high school, that's the best case scenario. And to make sure that they're able to be successful at that, we work with the small businesses in our locality to see what they need from our school district And so our kids are getting not only the basic education that they deserve, but also a trade that they can take forward into their life.
All right, Ms. Pasadomo?
Thank you. I love this question because, and I said this earlier, we have to change our whole attitude on education because not everybody is going to go to college. And the kids that are going to go to college will be successful in school. But the kids who don't want to go to college, they want to get a job, we have to help them. So I've been talking to people about just some really cool stuff. Let's go back to the Middle Ages. Remember when they had the apprenticeship program? We had the masons and we had the carpenters. Those are the kind of things, the creativity that we need to bring to our districts. And frankly, there's some kids that may not even want to go to school and can be apprenticed during class hours. I am so excited about some of the things that we can do in Florida and in some of our local districts, so stay tuned.
Very good. And on to our next question, which we come back down to Dr. Boddicker and Mr. Donalds. And this is a related question. Lorenzo Walker is waiting list only, says the writer. What is the possibility of having more trade high schools? And I'm not sure how this would fit into state funding necessarily, but I think it's a valid question. So we'll start with Dr. Boddicker.
Yes, it is a good question, and I know that we are looking at, as a county, opening up some additional educational space at FSW, for example, using the 1-cent sales tax that's on the ballot this November, and that's one of the things that might be done with that, and that could open up some additional space that might be used for vocational training. So it's something that we can look at. I think it is certainly a worthwhile pursuit to add additional vocational training facilities to our educational buildings.
And a quick follow-up to that. How would the state be involved in this?
Yes, I suppose the state certainly could allocate additional funds to support vocational training in schools, and I would be supportive of that effort.
Okay. Mr. Donalds, same two questions.
I do think it's related to the previous question. One of the things that we have to do is actually rethink vocational education or workforce training or career pathways education, however you want to talk about it. But the state has to completely revamp this. One of the proposals I'm looking at is looking at actually what they do in Escambia County. In Escambia County, they start with their students in the 7th and 8th grade, educating the students and the parents about the careers that are available in their local community, and then informing those students of the necessary credentialing and or classes they're going to need to take those jobs on. Every county in our state, whether it's here in Collier, Hillsborough County, Broward, Palm Beach County, is kind of doing their own thing. But as a state, we have no clear pathway for all of our students. In the next legislative session, one of the key proposals I'm going to be working on is how to create a statewide impact with respect to career pathways education. Because our students in middle school, when they start to become at-risk students, they have to know that there's an alternative to college where they can go and actually get a high-paying job that will put them on the path to being successful. They deserve no less.
All right, and to Ms. McFadden and Mr. Rommel. And we'll start with Mr. Rommel this time, so you get to go first for a change on the question. I know, it's nice of me, isn't it? What is your position on using standardized tests to grade teachers and schools?
Again, we're back to the accountability, and we need something to judge, the performance of our teachers. And I'm not sure the standardized test where teachers have to teach to the test just so they can get a passing grade is a great way. I would be open to a collaborative discussion with all the stakeholders involved to come up with a better system, because I don't think it's the best system we have right now.
Ms. McFadden?
Bob and I agree.
Well, let's hear it for bipartisanship. All right, the next question goes to Ms. Pasadomo and Ms. Karim. Do you believe that climate change issues, national and state, should be taught in all schools receiving tax money, including charter schools? And Ms. Pasadomo, we'll start with you.
Oh, good Lord.
You got the short straw on this one.
No, actually, no matter what you call it, the impact of environmental factors on our state and our country, just like so many other, we got a scientist over here, I'm sure she'll say it differently, but should be available to students. I mean, they have to learn everything. So, they should be learning geography. They should be learning civics. I have no problem with factual, scientific data being taught to our kids. And what you call it, I don't know, sea rise is a real thing. We've been talking about it for months, all summer. So I don't have a problem. But I would leave it up to the districts. Let them decide what their curriculum is going to be.
Ms. Karim?
Absolutely, climate change should be taught in all schools. It is based on science, and let's be frank, it is our kids who are going to have to deal with solving these issues of climate change, right? We have done very little. We've quite frankly failed them in this because for so long the governor wouldn't even let his staff say the words climate change or global warming. So now our kids have to deal with solving these climate change issues. Not only should they learn about it in school, but they should be learning critical thinking skills on how they're going to solve it.
Okay, and we'll go back down to this end of the table, and Mr. Donovan, you get to go first this time. If teachers are going to be paid according to their effectiveness, how would that be determined? In other words, what criteria would you like to see put in place?
Sure, that's a great question. The primary criteria that a teacher should be paid on is frankly the team leader, the principal at that school. They're the ones that are with that teacher every day. They are the ones that determine if that person is highly effective or substandard, and they should make those decisions accordingly. One of the reasons why we have such a robust accountability system is because we also have a very robust working contract for our teachers. So a teacher that is collectively bargained to go through the discipline/removal process is very arduous that compared to a charter school where it's actually quite simple. And so one of the reasons, one of the biggest reasons we have the school accountability system, which we do need to a degree, and I think there's steps we need to do to reduce that. But at the end of the day, if you're going to judge effectively how a professional should be paid, that's done by the people that work with them / supervise them on a daily basis. Because in the professional world, that is exactly how it's done.
And Dr. Boddicker?
Yes, I think we have a sort of punitive system now where teachers are in schools are judged by how well the students perform on these high-stakes tests, the FSA. And I don't think that that's fair because different teachers end up with different populations of students. Socioeconomically challenged students, maybe students who speak English as a second language, and they are not starting out of the gate at the same place as other students and are not going to necessarily do as well on those standardized tests. So I think we need to revise this so that there isn't so much an emphasis put on how the students do on the test, or at least if we do, we need to normalize it against other factors, including socioeconomic status and English as a second language or disability or what have you. Otherwise, I do think having administrators as part of the process of deciding how effective a teacher is a good idea as well.
Next question goes to Ms. McFadden and Mr. Rommel. How do you expect early learning programs to be accountable? The writer wants to know, are you planning to test preschoolers? Would you be planning to test preschoolers?
I would not, but it sounds like a fun afternoon. What was the beginning of your question?
Pardon me?
What was the beginning of it? Is that the whole thing?
How do you expect early learning programs to be accountable?
Accountable. Well, having had two children go through nursery schools, there were no testing. Certainly you could judge a school based on just walking in the door. Are the children happy? Is anyone crying? Is it clean? I would think a lot of these are in churches and they're leased properties. I have no answer to that. You certainly can't test preschoolers.
Mr. Rommel?
Unique question. Most of this conversation for the last hour and 51 minutes has been about less testing, and now we want to think about testing 3-year-olds. You know what? I have no idea how you test a 3-year-old. I don't have any children, but I don't think we need some state bureaucracy to come up with a program to do that either. But we need to make sure that places are safe, that people are background checked, that people that work there, yada yada. Make a test for 3-year-olds. I'll pass on that.
And I'm going to ask this question to all of you. We'll start with Ms. Karim and then go to Ms. Casadona and then back down the line from this end. Because I think this is a hot button question and everybody wants to weigh in on it. Should traditional public school districts be required to provide capital funding to charter schools? Ms. Karim, you get to go first.
No, they should not. Absolutely not. Traditional school districts have a responsibility to make sure that they are providing services to the children in their district, and they shouldn't have to provide funding for charter schools.
Okay, Ms. Casadona?
Thank you. That is a hot potato, and we have had different, every year the legislation changes. At one point it was 2% of the fixed capital outlay, and then we changed it. I think there should be sharing of capital dollars for charter schools that the school district agrees to have in the community. For example, the charter school like on Marco Island, I think it should get some of our taxpayer dollars because the district is not going to build a high school on Marco. So it makes sense. The only concern I have is the clawback provisions of if the capital dollars go to a charter school that misuses them, or the big problem was they would buy land in some other name and then build the school, and then if they went out of business, the land is in the name of some third party. So we have to have some very effective clawback provisions, but otherwise I think it's fair if the charter school is providing the service that the district school is not.
All right, Dr. Boddicker.
I would go back to home rule on this. I think a local school district can make this decision because in the example of the Marco Island School, obviously that's a school that serves a purpose, and maybe we should be providing some funding to them if the local school district deems that that's appropriate. But I don't think the state should be telling school districts what they should do and whether they should provide capital dollars for charter schools.
Mr. Donalds?
I think the key phrase has already been stated by Ms. Karim. It's funding for the children in their district. The children in their district is the way we should be looking at this. If a parent decides to send her child to a charter school that is a public school authorized by the local school district, and the local school district is the one that has taxing authority for all people who own property in the county, all people, then yes, they should share those local taxing dollars with local charter schools who are educating children within that county, charter schools that are authorized by that school district. Listen, folks, we've got to the situation where local school districts have the authority, and we grant them an authority from the state to tax, for funding the education of children that reside within their borders. But where the situation we are right now is that the school districts have said almost unilaterally they will only fund the school districts within their bureaucracy. The only county in our state that funds charters is Sarasota County. Marco Island High School should have gotten funding 5 years ago. It's ridiculous. And the only reason why they don't get it is because they're a charter school.
Ms. McFadden?
I could see some funding, some capital investment in charter schools if they fulfilled a need that was not being filled by a traditional public school. I don't know if that's always the case, though. The problem comes down when you're giving capital funds to large charter companies that are for profit, and then when they fail, you can't get that money back. So it's like we're investing in buildings that the public has no right to, no ownership rights to, and I think that's where the problem comes in.
Mr. Rommel?
Again, we're fighting about children as opposed to for children. For the 43 failure factories that we've been producing in our state for years and years, those children don't get those years back. Those children don't get their future years back. And you know what? If the parents want to send their kids to a charter school, we have an obligation to fund those schools so we have a proper building for those kids to go so they can get a proper education. Period. It's about the children, always about the children, and we need to fund them.
All right, that concludes our questioning. We're now going to give our 6 candidates a chance for a 1-minute closing statement each. And Ms. Pasadoma, we'll start with you. We'll go right down the table from that end.
Thank you all for the 2 hours. I know we thought it would be a long time. Yeah, it really did go quickly, and I appreciate that. So here's a couple of things. I in the legislature, I've been there for 8 years, and I was always involved in civil justice, the criminal justice system, corporate banking, all this other stuff. I get K through 12 appropriations for the first time this session, and I loved it. It was really hard, but I loved it. Think about this though. Our state budget coming up is $89.3 billion, and of that, $25.8 billion goes to education. That's 29% of our budget. It is a huge investment in our system and our children of this state, and I am committed to continue to look at how we can do better. And frankly, we've got to change the way we deliver it, and I am really looking forward to doing that, hopefully for the next 8 years.
Ms. Karim?
Thank you. I want to thank all of you for coming out this evening. Obviously, education is important to those of us who have kids and those of us who don't, because it is about the future of this state. I think we have to talk about accountability. We talk about how much we fund our public education, yet we haven't even kept up with the rate of inflation. We don't pay our teachers enough. We don't respect them enough. We have to make sure that we elect legislators that are actually working towards making our education systems better and more accountable. My opponent was rated as an F by the Florida Education Association for the past 2 years.
Teachers Union.
Well, yeah, it is a teachers union. It's a group of teachers who actually care about their job and want to make sure that they're making the future of the state better. So I think that you should really look hard about the people that we keep sending to Tallahassee, keep making these decisions that are not benefiting our kids and not benefiting our communities. My name is Annisa Karim. I'm running for Florida State Senate in District 28, and I ask for your vote on November 6th. Thank you.
Mr. Ramos?
Great. First of all, I want to thank everybody up here, but I want to thank you all. Collier County is definitely unique. The community is involved, and it's not that way. It's not that way everywhere in the state. But it's time that we modernize our education system. Everything else that we buy, everything else that we do, we have choice. We have choice, and that leads to better pricing and better competition and better results. Money is not the only issue. I grew up in New Jersey, and the two worst school systems that still today are Newark and Camden, New Jersey. And they continue to dump millions and millions and millions, and more money, more and more and more. And the people that run the school say, give us more money, we'll fix it next year, we'll fix it next year, we'll fix it next year. But you want to know what? Those kids keep failing, and they keep failing, and they keep failing, and you never have an opportunity. I don't know why this is such a big fight. Everything else, when we come up with something innovative, something creative, people jump on and say, yeah, this sounds like a great idea. But when we touch education, oh no, we can't do it that way. We've been doing it this way for 150 years. But you know what? It's time for a change, it's time to be innovative, and it's time to give our kids something that they can be proud of.
Ms. McFadden?
Our state is at the bottom of everything that matters the most. We're 46 for education. But we're high on the charts for private profit, income inequality, and special interest benefits, concessions, and tax breaks. With statewide political experience and a career as an administrator and business owner, I'm prepared to work hard for civil, collaborative, and inclusive government, prioritize what's important in our state budget process, and above all, provide representation for a change. I'm Sarah McFadden. I'm running for Florida House in District 106. I'm looking forward to representing you in Tallahassee. But first, I'll need your vote. Thank you.
Mr. Donalds?
Again, thanks everybody for coming out. Listen guys, this argument about traditional public schools versus charter schools versus private schools is frankly stale and is getting tired. What we have to start arguing for, what we really must start arguing for, is the education of the public. I am not a champion for a system. I'm not a champion for charters. I'm not a champion for traditional public school systems. I'm not a champion for private schools. I'm a champion for making sure that children get the education they deserve, and parents have every choice and every tool available to them in order to achieve it. A child only gets one shot at an education. And while we sit here and argue back and forth about whether it's that building or that building, and what if they're across the street from each other, who loses in that argument are the children. That's the argument that I see. I also got an F from the teachers union. But if you actually read their report, I actually had one of the highest Fs in the legislature, on the Republican side. It's actually quite interesting. But let me tell you, the reason why I got the highest F is because I actually listen to them, and we talk constantly. I am a legislator that is always open to discussing these issues with anybody who wants to. That's my commitment to you, and I thank you for your time tonight.
Dr. Boddicker?
Yes, thank you all so much for coming out. I am committed to making sure that we have a better educational system here in Florida. Our rankings are not good. They don't make me feel good about the educational system. And that is due in large part to the fact that we have drained the budget for the public education system here in Florida that educates the vast majority of the students. So fighting for every child means fighting for all those children who are in public schools. We don't have a lot of money to spend to send everybody to a private, unaccountable private school. And that's a real problem. We are sending a lot of money into that system without knowing what's happening with those children because they don't have to take any tests. We don't know, there's no curriculum standards. And we do need to be cognizant of duplicating efforts and making sure that we're not opening charters right next to traditional public schools because we're spending money on both of those systems. So we just need to be more careful with our educational dollars here in the state of Florida. And it doesn't have to be a battle, but we need to do that. I'm Jennifer Boddicker. I'm running for Florida House District 80, and I appreciate your vote in November. Thank you. Okay.
I just make a comment. For the last 2 months, my character has been under attack by Annisa. I was given the Legislator of the Year award by the Florida School Boards Association, the first Republican probably in the history of mankind. Thank you.
All right. Thanks to all of our candidates who I think all gave very thoughtful and reasoned answers, and to you for being an attentive audience. And we hope to see you at the polls on November 6th.